How you doing? This is Sam Tolley, your cultural apologist. And I got a bone to pick with some of my Democratic friends. Hold on a second, let me get my dog some ice. Here, Moni. Here, come on. Get you some ice, girl. Okay. This is election season. Getting ready for the 2018 midterms. And like clockwork, the same thing is happening again. The only thing that annoys me more than Democrats treating black people like they're children during election time is black Democrats letting them do it. It drives me completely up the wall. It makes absolutely no sense at all. That is, if you think logically instead of emotionally. If you go along with fear and intimidation, if you go along with the way the Democratic Party programs people to think, it makes sense that Democrats or that Republicans don't want black people to vote. But if you think logically and reasonably, and you examine the evidence, you will say it makes absolutely no sense at all. And in fact, it's the Democratic Party that are treating us like we're children by saying that black people, asking them to get voter identification is racism. What? What makes black people different from white people or Hispanic people or anyone else for that matter? How is it racist for us to have to show voter identification? Are you saying that we're inept or that we're children and we can't do it for ourselves? We need massa to help us and to look out for us. That's stupid. Furthermore, I've never seen one so-called Democratic leader ever once say that black folks shouldn't have to get driver's license to drive cars. I've never heard that. I've never seen that. I've never seen one say that black folks should be able to buy alcohol and tobacco without showing any kind of identification because they're minorities and it's racist to ask them to show it. No, they don't do that. But come voting time, it's racist to have minorities get identification. They can't afford it. Oh, we're not working? There's many of us that are working. All of us black folks ain't on welfare. There's more white folks on welfare than black folks. But nevertheless, many of these states that are requiring voter identification have made it available for free, if you want to go down that line. So, what is the reason? Why do they come out with this? And why do black folks accept this nonsense? Do they need white folks to help them cross the street? No. So why should we sit around and say we can't get voter identification? I guess if we can't get voter identification, we shouldn't be driving cars. We shouldn't be buying alcohol or tobacco. We shouldn't be doing anything that requires voter identification. And if we went to the Democratic National Convention, you know what they want? They want identification to walk in that sucker. They even want identification to walk into the NAACP convention. Look, let me tell you the story behind this nonsense. But first, let me remind you of something I just seen recently. Joe Biden being interviewed by Al Sharpton, and he's telling Al, oh, well, them Republicans don't want working people to vote. They don't want blacks to vote.
You realize just this past year, in 24 states, the administration's allies have introduced 60 pieces of legislation, or maybe 70 pieces of legislation, to curtail the franchise. Look, that's what these guys are all about, man.
Yeah.
These Republicans don't want working class people voting. They don't want black folks voting.
See, you have the Democrat leadership that want to keep black people under control, and they got their black gatekeepers like the Reverend Al, when he should be saying, wait a minute, you ain't no better than me, and no white person's any better than me. I can do for myself. All of us can get identification. Matter of fact, most of us have identification, or we couldn't legally drive cars. This same Joe Biden that a year or so ago stood up there and said, these folks, they want to put you back in chains again.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
And what he failed to do was to identify the folks that had black folks in chains. They were not Republicans. It was the Democrats that had black folks in chains. It was the Democrats that were the party of Jim Crow, of the KKK, of segregation, of slavery, of the whole vile, racist, make black folks less than a human being source. It was the Democrats. And by the way, let me make a little short rabbit trail, because I want to throw this in here for those folks that wonder about that 3/5. Well, the Constitution said that black folks were only 3/5 of the man. So they made it that in the Constitution that we weren't men. Look, before the United States was formed, the 13 colonies got together to defeat the British. When those folks got together to make a constitution, many of the states were slave-holding states, and many of the states were non-slave-holding states. Every state gets the number of representatives you get is by adding the total population. The South, the segregationists, the slave owners, all those folks wanted to count black folks in the South as full human beings, as full person, 5/5. The only reason why they wanted that count was to get more political representation in Congress. The North would have said, fine, free them, and they will get full representation. They didn't want to free us. They wanted the representation, but they did not want to give black folks freedom. The North said, well, no, we're not going to allow you to use them totally for your representation purposes. So we're going to allow it to be 3/5. By virtue of putting in that clause 3/5, it was one of the seeds that was going to eventually lead to the Civil War and the freedom of black folks. Because this way it ensured that the South could not get the congressional representation they wanted to secure the way they wanted to live. If they could have counted all the slaves, they would have had more power. If they would have had more power, then the Union would have never been able to stop slavery. So don't let the reverse history folks throw that mess in you. Just like this stuff about Republicans not wanting black folks to vote. It was the Republican Party that put in the amendments to give black folks freedom and the right to vote. It was the Republican Party, and that was the party that was fighting for the civil rights. Johnson was president, but it was way more Republicans than Democrats that made the bill go through. As a matter of fact, if you look back historically, when Eisenhower was president, he tried to do just about the same thing, and Johnson was Speaker of the House, and he fought it. This was all political for Johnson. But let me get back to the voting and black folks. And think about this. Black people make up 13% of the population. White folks make up 77% of the population. If you want to make sure the black vote count, then you are going to demand voter ID from everybody. Because otherwise, anybody could vote and not prove that they're a citizen. And think about it. Since there's 77% whites and only 13% blacks, blacks are the one at disadvantage by not having voter identification required. They're cutting their own throat. It's stupid. But see, the white Democrats don't want blacks to be lined up in that way for several reasons, I believe. Number one, they want us beholden to them. They want to keep this inferiority, we need them mentality stuck in our mind. Number two, when you see after post-election results about voter fraud, it's generally Democratic fraud. It's generally a bunch of Democrats that voted. They even have folks that's on voting rolls that ain't not even alive. Why do you think the Democrats want the borders open? Why do you think that they want to let a bunch of illegals in? Why do you think they want to add these so-called 11 million people here and add them to the voting roll? And I'm going to tell you why. But first, let me tell you this. You might ask yourself, well, why about the black politicians? How come they're not standing up for this? How come they're not saying that? Why are they? Blah, blah. Power. Power. Those that have power are in control. And if you have the power, the money will follow. These folks don't care about black people. They talk about it, but they don't care about it. Because if they cared about it, they would ensure that their vote count. They wouldn't be trying to bring in a bunch of illegals and give them the vote, because what their hope is, well, you got folks south of the border that are making way, way less money in their native land than they would make in America, and you let them come in, you say, come on, you can be part of this, and we're looking after you. Natural instinct, people will be beholden to you. So that would be more Democratic voters. That means that would be more people voting Democrat. That would mean the Democrats would have more power. And that means those folks that are on the perch will stay up there. And they will keep issuing out the bones to the little people. Because after all, they have to take care of the little people. See, as long as they're in power, that's the only thing that really matters. As long as they can bamboozle us into thinking that we can't get along without them, then they'll stay in power. So, black folks, don't let Democrats treat you like children. Don't let them treat you like you're a fool. If you have to have identification to go and buy alcohol or tobacco or cash checks or drive a car, just like everyone else, then why shouldn't you have identification to vote? What makes you better than anyone else? Because if you don't need identification to vote, according to your politicians, then you shouldn't need identification to do anything. You should be able to do whatever you want, because after all, you're incapable of doing it by yourself. I don't buy that for a minute. Wake up. Think logically. Examine the evidence. And if you do, you will see that the Democrats was making a fool out of you. Just like Biden was trying to make a fool out of us, talking about Republicans don't want black folks to vote, and that Republicans and that they'll put you in chains again. And Sharpton, one of their gatekeepers, was dutifully, agreeing. He's not a friend of ours. This is Sam Tolley, your cultural apologist. And I invite you, visit my website, inhimfirst.com, where we deal with stuff like this. And we deal with theological issues. And we deal with issues about the black man. We deal with issues about society as a whole. Everything from a Christian perspective. Because Jesus Christ comes first. And everything should be filtered through him. This is Sam Tolley, and I'm out. God bless you. Come on, Moni. Let's go.